All right, everybody. Will, thanks for doing it.
You bet.
It's not going to be a long thing. This is the new project I'm on. Talk people into sit down and tell one story about their cowboy or cowgirl perspective. So when you've been thinking on it for a second or two, what comes to mind? What helped develop your cowboy perspective, or gives you an advantage in the business world or even in life that you learned from growing up in agriculture?
Well, Neil, I was extremely blessed. I got to grow up in a cowboy community of Guthrie, Texas, right in the middle of big ranch country, and my dad worked for Tom Morehouse. And we were so blessed because those ranches used us kids just like grown men. There were times when we'd go out on the wagon, and we'd have 3 grown men, and the rest of everybody else would be buttons, or they'd call us kids.
See, now, so did they call you buttons?
Button, yeah.
I never heard that before.
Yeah, so they'd call us boys button. And so from a young age, I got the opportunity to go to work with Dad and go to work with other grown men. Tom was one of my great mentors. But all the men that we worked with treated us just like their own kid.
Yeah.
And so it was not unusual for me to get my butt chewed out by somebody else's dad.
Yeah.
Or by some single guy that was day working for us, So that was a huge blessing for us because, we learned how to work from a young age, but we also got treated like an adult from a young age,
Which meant responsibility, expectation, requirement of respect, these kind of things that I think is sadly, and maybe I'm jaded, but I feel like it's missing from our culture in a lot of ways right now. Well, anyways, keep going. I love that. I learned something already.
Yeah, so we weren't sheltered, not protected at all. In fact, they would just ask you to do something regardless of whether they thought you knew how to do it or not.
Yeah.
They have a 12-year-old, and they'd say, "Hey, Button, go get in the truck and the trailer and follow us," and whether you knew how to drive a stick or not. Yeah. They didn't even ask. They just said, "Go do it," And so, we also had the opportunity growing up to go out on the wagon and be around men and learn the rules. All the rules around the wagon, like don't run, don't walk between.
There wasn't a book there to read.
No book.
You got to learn it by messing up
and getting
smacked.
Yeah. Yeah. You walk between the chuck box and the oven, and you're going to get shapped. I mean and you just learned by watching. You got to be way more aware and observant of what everybody else was doing, because you knew, hey, there's probably a rule out there that I don't know yet, so I'm just going to follow their lead, And, we didn't have vacations. Our vacation would be going on spring break, would be going out on the wagon.
Yeah.
And then they'd let us play hooky for 1 week after spring break so that we could stay out with the wagon 1 more week. And it was just such a blessing growing up, because we were being mentored by men that most people would not want their kids to be mentored by if you just met them on the street.
Right.
But by the same time, they took real good care of mentoring us and making sure that we grew up and developed as not just as cowboys, but because they needed us to develop as cowboys. They needed us to fill the spot. They needed us to be on the drive, in our spot, in the right place. But they also cared a lot about us as people.
Which shows the care.
Knowing that we weren't all going to end up in the cattle business.
Yeah.
They were
okay,
very
so
aware
real
of
quick,
that.
tie that to how that helps you today in your business.
So as a CPA and financial planner, it's hard work. Especially this time of year. It's tax season for us, so we're right in the heat of it.
Yeah.
It just developed that grit where you're like, I'm not giving up. I'm going home when the job's done, not when I get tired.
Oh, I love that.
And
yes.
We're going to stay till it's done. And I went up here to Fort Worth right out of college and went to work for the biggest accounting firm in the world. And right off, I shined. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I shined.
You're just
and
telling
they're
the truth.
They're like, well, Will, why did you shine? And I'm like, well, I was the first one there in the morning. And I was the last one to leave every day.
Yeah.
And I would go to my manager at the end of the day and say, is there anything else I can take care of before I go home? And it might be midnight, but I'd still go to him and ask. Yeah. And, I tell these kids that I talk to in high school that those are 3 things you need to do regardless what industry you're in. Show up early, stay late, and ask your supervisor before you leave, is there anything else that I can do before I go home?
Yeah.
And so that work ethic probably is translated very well for me. But the other thing is being able to relate to adults and people and just say, hey, I come from an ag background. Everybody came from an ag background if you go back enough generations.
Right.
So, in an agrarian society, if you're from an ag background, you have an instant connection.
Yeah.
And all those principles that govern agriculture and the cowboy way translate into every other career. It does not matter what career you go into.
It's so true. I love it. I mean, you nailed it. Thanks for sitting down, sharing that story. Button. I never knew that.
Yeah, Button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, great. Good story. Appreciate it.